Hey everybody, thanks for stopping by. Today we're going to talk about cacao and how you could grow a cacao in Florida. That's right, you can do it in South Florida. It's going to take a little bit of planning, but you can do it. And we're going to talk about that right now. Now, cacao is where the chocolate comes from, and I don't know about you, but I love chocolate. But I want to point out that oftentimes people will grow their cacao trees and they grow them in full sun, and they really need some partial shade. And this guy's got some pretty heavy sunlight in front of me, which would be east, and then to the west it's pretty well blocked out, so it's got some partial light and it's doing pretty good. The only thing I want to point out about this cacao, that probably the soil here is pretty alkaline, because judging from the leaves, it looks like it has a pretty bad case of chlorosis. And I'll come in closer to show you what the leaves look like and why I believe the soil here, the pH is a little bit too high. Cacao likes to have acid soil. So let's get in a little bit closer and talk a little bit more about cacao. All right, so as we look closer, we can definitely see that we have a nutritional deficiency on this cacao plant. It's difficult to lower the pH of the soil. It takes time. You got to build it up with lots and lots of pine needles, peat, and various other things that you can add, amending the soil, that will help to prevent this type of nutritional deficiency. A quick way to fix this is to either apply a drench of chelated iron. You can also apply a drench of balanced minerals, so you have a couple of different types of minerals: iron, magnesium, zinc. And those are all very beneficial. Magnesium is also really important for the cacao plant and for most plants. And believe it or not, zinc is also a very important mineral that should be incorporated into what most of the plants need, not just cacao, but coffee and many other plants. But really, I think that a good way to take care of this plant now would be to do a foliar spray and apply a very good chelated iron. And by applying a foliar, I mean you put that in a pump-up sprayer and then you spray from top to bottom, usually in the early evening, maybe 6 o'clock, maybe before the sun begins to go down, but not too hot, not too direct sun, obviously. And then when you do that, try to spray it underneath the leaves, and within a week or two you should start to see an improvement on the tree. Also, again, as I mentioned earlier, you can do the nutritional all around as a drench around, and do it outside along the drip line of the tree. Now, we're going to go in and show you a couple of small pods that are developing, and then I'm just going to quickly touch upon pollination, because pollination is tricky, and when you look at this, you're going to see lots of flowers, and there's obviously pollination going on here. I don't think it's hand pollinated. I think nature is taking care of it. And in terms of pollination, you do need to have a certain insect that I'm going to tell you all about in just a moment. All right, so looking straight ahead, you can see that we have very, very small little flowers. Now, if you really want to understand how you would be able to get your trees to be pollinated, yes, it can be done by ants occasionally, different little insects, but the pollination that goes on has to be inside that flower, and it's a very small flower, very tiny parts, so it's hard for most insects to pollinate this. Wind pollination is not really something to rely on at all. The most effective pollinator, the one that's really needed in order to have a good production of cacao, is to attract these little midges known as the no-see-ums. And that little midge doesn't necessarily, come around unless you have plenty of organic material on the ground, a lot of leaf litter. So a lot of these leaves will be left to fall on the ground. It helps to fertilize the tree, it helps to create good soil biology, and it creates an environment so that those little midges can live and proliferate and propagate there and continue to fly around. And they're nasty little fellas. If you're walking around and they get you, you'll feel them, because they're called no-see-ums. Now, again, they'll go in there and they will take care of the pollination. One other thing, when you do harvest your cacao pods, and I'll show you one or two of these smaller cacao pods that are not yet developed, and then I'll explain how to cut off the pod. It's very important that you do this the right way, or else you're going to mess up your whole tree. So here we have a pod that's developing nicely, and it's important to understand that when you harvest, when you cut this, that you do not cut very, very close to the edge here. You have to cut actually far away from the edge, closer to the fruit, closer to the pod out here, and you do want to leave that little stump, okay? You do not want to cut real flush, because if you do that, you damage the sensitive pads that are in here, which are the places where the flowers develop. If you want to learn more about how to plant cacao seeds, I have a little video that explains it all here on my channel. I'll post a link at the top. Thanks for coming by. I hope you liked this short little video about growing cacao in Florida.